Welcome back to At Your Service. Brad Young in with you this evening. And as I mentioned before the break, I want to welcome to the show Mark Rice. He's running for Congress from the 8th Congressional District in Illinois. Mark, welcome to KMOX.
Hey, Brad. Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Well, it's great to talk to you too, Mark. And the reason why I wanted to have you on, there's a couple of reasons. Obviously, you're running for Congress in the 8th Congressional District, but tell us a little bit about your background in business, because as you and I have previously chatted, I think that really will impact how you would vote, how the kind of bills you would support, and the direction you would like to see our country going from that business perspective. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, sure, Brad. Thank you again. And I don't want to bore you with too much of that, but I'll just say I'm a fifth-generation entrepreneur. So I've really been working for myself most of my life. I actually started out my career in St. Louis, believe it or not, with A.G. Edwards. I'm sure you know that firm. That was back in the 80s. But anyway, my for the last couple decades, I run a energy company, and I've been in the energy business. It's a family thing. I'm from Texas, and so I grew up in the oil and gas business, and I run a business that my whole family works at, and it's we're the largest energy broker in the state of Illinois. And in Missouri there, you don't really have the same thing that we have in Illinois, where it's deregulated, where you can choose your gas and electric providers. But in Illinois, in spite of Illinois being a little bit more of a liberal and almost like a communist state, they do have free choice for electricity and gas. So anyway, that's what I do. And as a business guy, I just see things going so far in the wrong direction. I felt it was just time to kind of put up or shut up and try to do something about it. So that's really my business background and why I feel compelled to do something about it and enter this sort of very ugly, dirty world of politics.
I understand. We're talking to Mark Rice. He's a candidate for Congress from the 8th Congressional District in Illinois. And Mark, one of the things that is a constant thorn in my side is when I read about the national debt. I think we're up to $32 trillion, as we've seen when interest rates went up. That impacted the federal government's ability to really function because of the increased debt load. And wasteful spending, just to me, is just a fundamental problem with the way government works. I mean, you've been in private business. Private businesses can make bad decisions, have cost overruns, but the private markets have built-in mechanisms to minimize those problems. Companies get bought out, companies go out of business, but the federal government never seems to do that. What would you do as a congressman to try to bring some of that fiscal restraint that you've learned in business? How would you bring that into the federal government?
Well, so once again, one of the reasons, the many reasons, but one of the very large reasons that I am running, I was looking at the debt calculator just today. It said 33 trillion. What's a trillion here or there, right? You know, it's so out of control. The debt as a percentage of GDP now is well over 100% in the first time in the history of the United States. And only 10 years ago, the debt to GDP ratio was like 50. And now 10 years later, it's double that. And a lot of that, I think, Brad, is because we have elected these politicians on both sides that really don't represent us. You know, they're not servant leaders, and they're very interested, and most interested, I should say, in just getting reelected. And so one thing that is the easy thing is just to kick the can down the road and not solve the problems and print money, whether it's for COVID or for wars or for grift or whatever. And that's what they've done. So if the United States was a business and you looked at the balance sheet and the income statement, nobody would invest in it. And all the people who are in charge would be fired immediately.
Yes.
And so that's really what I'm trying to do, is fire at least one of them. I can't fire all of them, but we really need to take our country back. And that's a part of it. But it's just indicative of so many things that the government does where they really don't have our interests at heart. We have career politicians, which I don't think the framers of the Constitution ever anticipated.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. We're talking to Mark Rice, candidate for Congress from the 8th Congressional District in Illinois. And Mark, one of the other issues that's been around now since October 7 is the Israeli-Hamas conflict that's going on. And we see calls from the left today, certainly this week, very strong calls to support Palestine, to support Hamas, to disenfranchise Israel, to stop the funding of Israel. In fact, we've had protests here in St. Louis, Mark, against Boeing because Boeing sells defense products to Israel. So how, number one, I want to know your position on this, but secondly, given that Israel is one of the few pro-freedom capitalist democracies in the Middle East, isn't it important to support Israel, regardless of whether you like or dislike Israel? But don't we need friendly partners in that region?
Yeah, well, I agree with you 100% on that, Brad. I mean, first of all, Israel's our strongest ally and perhaps really only our true ally in the entire Middle East, which is so very important because of all the energy that's there. And once again, since we've gone from being energy independent to being energy dependent, now more than ever, we rely on that part of the world. And here they really have good versus evil. I mean, we have the same thing. We have these leftists, liberals that are protesting and shutting down highways and making lots of noise and protesting businesses and all of that. But that's just their MO. I mean, at the end of the day, we're fighting a war on terror in Israel. And luckily for the United States, we don't really have to fight it. So I'd much prefer to fight people who want to kill us and want to kill Israelis, want to kill Jews, want to kill Christians. They have a very warped sense of the world, these terrorist groups, and they're no different. I don't really see the difference between ISIS and Hamas and Hezbollah and Al Qaeda. I mean, these are really evil terrorist groups that the United States, to their credit, has designated them as terrorist groups. And for some on the left to be protesting the way they do, I mean, I understand the psychology behind it, but it's really just ludicrous. I mean, this is a war where good is hopefully going to prevail against evil, and hopefully we won't have it on our shores, although I really worry with all this border nonsense and millions of these military-age males coming over here, that some of them are coming into our country, but hopefully not. And in the meanwhile, at least Israel's fighting the good fight to destroy these people.
We're talking to Mark Rice, candidate for Congress in the 8th District in Illinois. And Mark, you mentioned something that I want to follow up on. That's the border. According to the Congressional Budget Office, CBO, in the year 2023, we had 2 million illegal immigrants come across our border in Mexico. And at this point, because of the catch and release policy of the Biden administration, we don't have any idea where these folks are going. We have no guarantee that they're going to return for any asylum hearings. These folks who are illegal immigrants, and I always make the distinction between legal and illegal immigration. These illegal immigrants are essentially not just non-documented citizens. We don't know who they are, what their agenda is, or what they intend to do in this country. What would you do if you are elected to Congress, Mark Rice, from the 8th District? How would you approach this issue at the border?
So this is a good one because my opponent, his name's Raja Krishnamurthy. He's a very far left-leaning, liberal guy. So he, just like Joe Biden, are essentially for an open border, thinking that somehow allowing all of these immigrants, illegal, as you say, immigrants to come into this country is somehow going to benefit the country, although I frankly think that they think it'll benefit them because they believe, and I don't think they're correct, that they'll get a lot of, lifetime voters out of the deal. But I don't call it illegal immigration. I call it an invasion, and it can be stopped. It's just common sense. There's a lot of things the federal government could do, and I'll just list them off for you real quickly, is reinstate Title 42, reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy, finish the wall, do a better job of securing the border, and then we were talking about terrorists before, 2 cartels, Sinaloa and another one of these Mexican cartels that are doing a lot of the child trafficking and sex trafficking and of course, the fentanyl, which killed 100,000, mostly young Americans last year. We're doing nothing about it. So what I would propose to do as a federal official would be do everything we can to control the border, but also go into the interior of Mexico and shut those guys down. And yes, these guys are thugs and they have some weapons and all of that, but we've got the finest military in the world. And I've been assured by military experts that if we really had the will to do it, we could shut that down in a matter of a week or two. And Brad, we're talking about saving the lives of 100,000.
Yes.
Most children. I mean, this is a serious thing. And I don't know how it is that we don't talk about it, or it seems sort of lost in the noise of all of the bad things that are going on. But these are things that government just doesn't have the will to do. But there are people who do. And, everybody's divided on the issue. But hopefully in November we can fix that and we can take care of business.
Yeah, this is one of those issues, Mark, where it's one of these issues that the majority of Americans can actually agree on how to fix the problem, but we have politicians both on the right and on the left who refuse to take any action with regard to this border crisis. And it's frustrating to regular Americans, regular voters, the people in between the coasts, between California and New York, who are here in the Midwest. It's frustrating to say, you know what, there's common sense problems that can be solved at the border, but we just need politicians who have the will to do it.
Well, the common sense solutions, like some of the ones I just mentioned for the border, they're almost too easy. That's what you would do if you don't care about getting reelected. You're trying to serve the people, even the illegals themselves. It's no good for them. You should see in Chicago how bad it is. We have over 30,000 of them now, and really don't have the infrastructure, the schooling, the medical. Mm-hmm. You talk about inflation. We're talking about the economy and what it does to the economy. It's bad for really everybody, and yet the politicians are worried about getting elected. And there's a strong sense on the liberal side of the world that thinks this is somehow compassionate. And there are other people who have more sinister conspiracy ideas of what's behind it. But regardless, if the right politicians can get control of the executive branch and certainly the Congress, we could put a stop to it pretty quickly. I mean, it just isn't that complicated. And by the way, did you see what Governor Abbott did today?
I did. Governor Abbott, just to quickly recap, Governor Abbott wanted to put razor wire and did put razor wire along the southern border. The Supreme Court issued an order yesterday, 5-4, which I disagree with. And I'm going to go through those reasons in a few moments, but basically stated that the federal government was allowed to come in and remove that razor wire. And Governor Abbott today took the position that this is an invasion, that literally the life and the health and the welfare of the state of Texas is dependent upon this, and he's going to defy that Supreme Court order. I'm presuming that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, I just got through reading it just a little while ago. I give him credit. I mean, if the federal government is failing, it's sometimes time for patriots to step up and do what needs to be done, at least if it's constitutionally legal to do so. I know you're a lawyer, I'm not, but if that's legal, I think that could actually go a long way to helping the situation.
And I'll be going through some of that, Mark, after we're finished. But again, we're talking to Mark Rice, candidate for Congress from the 8th District in Illinois. And Mark, if folks want to learn more about your campaign or even be a part of your campaign, how can they do that?
Oh, come join the revolution, because that's what it is. I appreciate it, Brad. My website is Rice. My name is RICE, the number 4 Congress. So rice4congress.com. And from there, they can do anything from making a donation to volunteering to walk and knock on doors to putting up a yard sign. We're really all about doing things differently because the state of Illinois is so very blue, and we're trying to turn it red. And I feel with the way things are going right now, especially, we've got a really good chance of doing that.
Well, Mark, hey, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to us tonight here on KMOX, and I'm sure we'll be talking as this campaign season proceeds.
Well, I look forward to it. Thank you so much for having me, Brad.
Thanks, Mark.
Congratulations and thanks.
Great to talk to you, sir.